Hello and welcome. This is the Zen community of Oregon, making the teachings of the Buddha Dharma accessible to support your practice. New episodes air every week.
Take refuge in the transcendent truths of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Welcome to this Sesshin 2025, March. The theme is usually sound. The foundation of Sesshin is Zazen. And Zazen is about the direct experiencing, the direct awareness of this moment. The direct awareness of this moment. And the direct awareness, direct experience means to recognize the reality of our life without a defensive shell. To be anchored in the direct experience now of this breath, this life, this mind, without the shell of opinion and judgment and criticism and conclusion and separations that are based upon thought and belief. It is, for example, in music, allowing the music to speak, to reveal itself, to express itself, and to be impacted, touched, moved by the direct hearing of, feeling of, knowing of music, rather than our labels, our commentary, previous evaluations, etc. And this same direct experience applies to our breath. Each breath is ephemeral, just like each note in a musical composition is ephemeral, but each breath is ephemeral. The blossoms, the cherry blossoms, all the blossoms that are coming out in the spring, they're ephemeral. They're here just for a little bit of time, and they disappear. They have a moment of beauty, and they're gone. This breath has a moment of beauty and is gone. The sound that you're hearing right now, each tone has a moment of life, of liveliness, and it's gone. And the direct experiencing of the fluidity of our own awareness, the direct experience of the fluidity of our own experience is the foundation of Zazen. We could say that Zazen is the sacred art of being experienced, being lived by this world. The sacred art of being lived by the world. And what is the essential requisite for a sacred art? Awareness. Attention. Someone went to one of the great Chinese masters and said, my life is short, I have a very little time to live. Can you give me a teaching that will go right to the heart? The master wrote, attention. Attention, we all know attention. We all have talked about, heard about attention. We all can pay attention. Isn't there anything more to the point? Isn't there anything that's deeper? Isn't there anything that's more alive? Isn't there anything you can say that really will touch my heart and make me recognize this? The master wrote, attention, attention, attention. What is attention? Attention. It is attention, it is awareness that reveals the truth, that embodies the truth. Awareness itself is the embodiment of truth. Awareness itself is the manifestation of the non-dual. People like to use non-dual teachings a lot, or at least the words. But awareness, the object of awareness and awareness itself are not three things. They're not separate. Awareness and the objects of awareness are not two. Our awareness of sound and sound are not two things. Our awareness of breath and breath are not two things. We could say enlightenment is waking up to this. To recognize that there is only awareness being aware of awareness, and no one who's doing the awareness. From this perspective, there is nothing else to be said or done, really. And liberation is found in awareness of awareness, with awareness. So from that foundation, we're all in the same boat, so to speak. We all have the same fundamental practice. We all have the same fundamental mind, the mind of awareness. And yet, in the non-dual, in awareness itself, it includes the contents of awareness. It includes the contents. Awareness is essentially all there is, an awareness of awareness of awareness of awareness of awareness. And yet, in that endless regression of awareness, there are the objects of awareness. And so we use the objects of awareness, we use words and language and stories to point at, to elucidate, to encourage, to inspire us to recognize what is always fundamentally the foundation of our life of truth. And thus we come to Sesshin. We come to Sesshin to recognize what is the foundation of being, what is the most true in our direct experience, and then learning to recognize it, to express it, to live from it, and to help others find freedom is part of Sesshin. In the Zen Buddhist tradition, a classic text of the non-dual nature of things and the functioning of that non-dual nature in our life is the Platform Sutra. So also called the six ancestors, the six patriarchs, Dharma Jewel Platform Sutra. Platform Sutra by the sixth ancestor in China, Wei Ning. And the text was given the title Sutra, which usually refers to the things that the Buddha said. Even apocryphally, the sutras usually begin with, "Thus have I heard," or "Thus it was said," or something. The implication being that Ananda, who was the Buddha's nephew and attendant, who was with the Buddha for 30 years and listened to the Buddha's discourses after the Buddha's death, went to a council in India. And they said, "Please tell us what the Buddha's essential teaching was." And then Ananda would say, "Thus did I hear. When I was standing by the side of the Buddha, thus did I hear at such and such a place, given to so many different people. Here's what the Buddha said." And that became the signature of the Buddhist sutras. Well, the Platform Sutra, the Dharma Jewel of the Platform Sutra, was regarded by the ancients, the ancient Chinese masters, as such a pivotal, foundational, important, vital expression of Dharma that it was called a sutra. So this is a sutra written, compiled in about 700 CE and attributed to the Chan master Wei Ning. Now, Wei Neng is in the apocryphal lineage of Buddhism, because what do we really know about the daily life of something that went on, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 years ago? So the evolution, as probably you know, is in the 500s. Great Master Bodhidharma came from India to China. And Buddhism had been in China for 400 years, several hundred years before that time. And it was, there were temples and monasteries, the whole shebang. And Bodhidharma came, and the essential thing that he brought was that the Dharma, the truth, is something that can be directly realized by each and every person. And that at the root of that direct realization is a great miraculous mystery which can be perceived, which can be recognized. And it is said that as an old man, he went to China. It said it took him several years to go to China from India. And he met with Emperor Wu. Emperor Wu was an emperor of the southern Tang, I believe. And Emperor Wu talked to Bodhidharma and said, I've done all these wonderful things. I have ordained monks, I build temples, I build monasteries, I have paid for sutras being translated. I've done lots of things. Tell me, what is the merit I'm going to receive from all that? And Bodhidharma said, there is no merit. Tell me the benefit I'm going to get from all that. Tell me what I'm going to get from my spiritual practice. I've done all these great things. What am I going to get? Bodhidharma said, sorry. Now, the emperor was dissatisfied with that answer, because his whole life had been built upon, like ours, on getting. I'll get something, I'll get better, I'll get a better job, I'll get a better partner, I'll get a better state of mind, I'll get better understanding, I'll get. And his life was just like ours. I'll get, what do I get? He happened to be an emperor, so he could afford to pay for lots of things. It's not an uncommon state of mind for leaders of countries and us. And Bodhidharma said, no, there's nothing. That's what you get. You get this moment. You get the alive, awake moment right here. You get this life. You get to wake up right here. And you can, of course, it is incumbent upon all of us to exercise our lives and to utilize our skills and to do the very best we can do with the particular karmic bundle that we have. It's very vital and important, just like for the emperor, it's important to act wholeheartedly, to give life to this life, this particular way of being, this particular body-mind. But what do we get from it? We get life. We get life. We get to recognize the life that is living us, that is moving through us, that is always present, that is unafraid. And then this life which lives us becomes an unfolding of that mystery. If we don't do that, if we have some understanding that does not incorporate this particular body-mind, this particular circumstance, that life that we found ourselves in, then it's very limited. Then it's an idea, because things are not two. So Bodhidharma talked to the emperor and said, you get nothing. Vast emptiness and nothing that can be called holy. Everything is special. Everything has a shining light. Everything is important. If it's in our life and in front of us, that is important. And it's not as though there is some other thing somewhere else that is the more important thing to do. It is what has been brought to us right now with this breath, with this mind. That right there is the manifestation of the vital life of Dharma. So, Bodhidharma is regarded as the first ancestor in China. He left the emperor. He went, according to the story, to Shaolin Monastery or Shaolin Mountain in China. He had a disciple named Weiko. Weiko was a mature person in his 40s, and he had been studying Dharma for many years. He'd been a monk. His life was devoted to Dharma, but he was not satisfied. His heart was not at peace. He had worked. He'd gone to lots of retreats. He'd been doing teachings. He'd probably had, translated sutras. He lived in community. He was very erudite, but his heart was not at rest. And to me, that is the sign that that we're all in that same boat. When our heart is not at rest, what does that mean? That means deep inside, is there a place that doesn't feel complete, that there's rubbing, that there's grating, there's a sense of dissatisfaction, a sense of separation. Weiko had this gnawing dissatisfaction despite his erudition, his education, his success. And he sought out and found Bodhidharma. And it's said that he found Bodhidharma in the winter, and Bodhidharma was meditating in a cave. Weiko went to him and kind of stood outside the cave entrance, kind of waiting for him to notice him, waiting for his attention. And Bodhidharma just ignored him, was in samadhi, whatever. And finally, so the story goes, that the snow started falling, and he stood in the cold and the snow rose. And in the morning, Bodhidharma noticed him and said, what are you doing here? What do you want? I've come from the Dharma. I've come for the truth. And Bodhidharma's answer is, well, you're a intelligent person. You've got what you think you want. You're arrogant. You're full of yourself. Why should I bother teaching you? None of us can learn when we're really filled with ourselves. When we're filled to the brim with what we know and all of our understanding and everything that we've accomplished and all of our sophistication. There's not much room. And in the archetypal story, Weiko cut off his arm and said, here, I offer this to you. I let go of even this. I let go of myself. Now, the reality is he did not pull out a knife and try to cut his arm off. That doesn't work. You can't do that. But the implication is that he was willing to let go of his own sense of separation, of arrogance, to let go of our arrogance. And he said, I'll let go of my arrogance in this dramatic way. Bodhidharma said, okay, tell me, what's going on? Why are you here? He said, my heart is not at ease. My heart is not at ease. I'm suffering. And then the famous words of Bodhidharma, he said, well, bring me your mind. Show me your heart. Show me what is suffering. And then, of course, that's true for all of us. What is it that is unhappy? What is it what's the friction we feel inside? Where is it? Show it. Where's that friction? Where's the dissatisfaction? Where's the unhappiness? Wiko says, I've searched endlessly. I've searched deeply. I've searched meticulously. I have looked in my heart, my mind, my body, everything I can look. I cannot find it. The Bodhidharma says, there, right there, you're liberated. Now, we can all hear lots of stories. We can hear things like that. The great koans, the great masters, they say something really pivotal and say something like that. You know, I've searched endlessly. I can't find it. Yes, right there. You're already liberated. We hear these kind of things all the time, but we have not actually practiced enough. We have not investigated enough. We have not looked deeply enough so that a turning word like that touches us. In this particular case, Wiko had practiced, had investigated, had gone into these questions over and over and over. And he was obviously a very hard case because it took him a long, long time, like some of us, all of us. But when the time is right, when we have investigated closely enough, when we have looked closely enough, when we have settled our mind closely enough, sometime things will hit us. Oh, I see that. That's the way it is. I recognize that. And it can be quiet. It can be subtle. It can be dramatic. It can be little by little, a realization. It can be a great realization. Wiko is the second of the Chinese ancestors. His number one student was somebody who was afflicted with leprosy. Those of you who've been in India or other places where leprosy is active, you know, people lose their fingers, they become disfigured, lose their sight, they can become quite debilitated. And I understand it is a state of constant irritation. So much irritation that in the old days people would put their fingers in fires to try to cauterize them to ameliorate the sensation. And this person went to Wiko. He found him. He was, as you know, in previous millennia, lepers were, it's an infectious disease, and so they were always cast out. They were always isolated. The leper found Wiko and was talking to him about his sickness and his disease. And Wiko also said, what is it in you that is really sick? You can say, yes. What is it that says yes? Is that sick? Is there something in you that has leprosy? What is the place that has no illness? And the third ancestor had a realization. He still had leprosy. He still was, a disfigured person. But his mind, suddenly he realized, this particular circumstance is just passing through. I'm not my body. I'm more than my body. There's the truth of our body, and there's other truths that are, in a way, more fundamental. The bodies that we had when we were 12 is long gone, or 20, or in some cases 20, 25, 30, 50, 60, 70. Long gone. All those bodies are long gone. And yet, here we are, alert, alive. The third ancestor also had a Dharma heir, who had a Dharma heir. Each of the beings in our lineage, each of the beings in the world's lineage were humans. They were humans, and as humans, they faced all the things that humans face, each in their own way. Everybody, number one truth of Dharma is everybody's got problems. Everybody has challenges. It doesn't matter whether you have a lot of money or no money. It doesn't matter whether you have a healthy body or not a healthy body. It doesn't matter whether your mind is afflicted or unafflicted. There are challenges. And each person who encountered the Dharma and understood the Dharma and manifested the Dharma and taught the Dharma had challenges, had big challenges. Had challenges of wandering mind and aching bodies and sickness, and had challenges of persecution, had challenges of all the, the human things. And yet, there is something that is transcendent, that penetrates through all challenges, that is always present and alive, and that is the focus of Sesshin. And that is the place of liberation, the liberation that happens regardless, not regardless, but in the midst of, that penetrates through our particular vexations. Our vexations are not an impediment unless we make them so. It is said that Weiko, the sixth ancestor in China, said that he was the story, if you feel like reading it at some point, it's a lovely story, at the beginning of this sutra, Platform Sutra. And the story is basically a rags to riches, magnificent hero's journey. You know, somebody who's really poor, who has no education, who is doing really at the very lowest level of menial work, has a deep realization. They travel to a very elite monastery in China, where there are thousands of monks with very, kind of one of the jewels of Dharma, and then their realization shines forth, and they're discovered, and are transmitted and become the sixth ancestor. It's a lovely story. And of course, it applies to all of us. And he becomes a bearer of wisdom. And then he disappears, goes off into the woods, ripens, cultivates. Any insight that we have is never complete in itself. It has to be matured. It has to be ripened in this human realm. There's no shortcut to spiritual maturity, regardless of the depths of our insight. So after a number of years traveling, being in the woods, doing some practice, he said he practiced with hunters and other itinerants. He presented himself in southern China. And the famous koan of his coming out is two monks are looking at a flag, and they're discussing the nature of motion, the nature of movement. And they're saying, the flag's moving. Obviously, moving in the wind. And then another monk says, no, the flag is actually not moving, it's the wind that's moving. The flag is actually still, the texture of the material is it's just the way it is, and it's only being moved by the wind. And the other one says, oh, well, if there's just wind with no flag, then there's no movement. And they go back and forth, the way people do. And the sixth ancestor happened to hear them as he was going by and said, no. It's not the flag moving, it's not the wind moving, it is your mind that is moving. It's your thoughts that are moving. It is your awareness that is creating mind, wind, flag. He was recognized, and one of the local government officials, through certain means, invited him to give a talk. And so he sat on the ordination platform, that's why it's called the Platform Sutra, that in the traditional the traditional ordination ceremony of becoming a bhikkhu, a monk, there is a, a platform, and that platform can be quite large. It can be, probably in the old days, the size of a football field sometimes, but usually it's like 20 by 20. And on there they would do all the ordination ceremonies. The ordination ceremony, in the traditional way, you need to have a number of representatives of people who were previously ordained. So he would sit on the ordination platform and he gave a talk. And then his disciples transcribed that talk. And then the transcription of that talk then became the Platform Sutra. So what we have here, what we're going to be using as the theme for our sesshin, is the sound and the teaching around the Platform Sutra. Now, the Platform Sutra is about direct realization. It's about the non-dual. It's about this life. All the things we've been talking about. In this sesshin, the breath, of course, is that, and we're also using sound. Any of the senses can be focused on, and we can, like an orange, if we have an orange and we put an acupuncture needle any place on the orange and push it down, it always reaches the center. Well, the 5, 6 senses, 12 senses, all the different senses, all have that capacity of, if we go into them deeply, we'll come to the root. Sound, kinesthetic sense and the sense of sound are two of the most accessible of the senses. Proprioception is a harder sense to focus on. So we focus on sound or proprioception, sound or the kinesthetic experience of the body moving as it breathes, for example. But if we're focusing on sound, then we have to focus on sound, the nature of sound right now, hearing the tones that are coming out. But the hearer of that sound is imminent. That which hears sound is never a millisecond, a millimeter away from you. We hear sound right where we sit, stand, walk. Sound does not come from the outside in. If you look carefully and you allow your mind to become still, you can watch sound arise within your own mind. And we attribute that all kinds of ways, and we have instruments and speakers and voices and voice box. But sound, as do all things, arises right where you sit. Arises in awareness. And awareness has no location. But it's always very intimate. So sound arises intimately. And the experience of sound arising intimately, being heard intimately, is part of what this sutra is about. Part of the direct realization of Dharma. And then the sutra talks about the inherent freedom, the creativity, the dynamicism, the ever-flowing quality of that vital aliveness that can be directly perceived. And so we come to sesshin, and we concentrate, because nothing can be occurred in our life without concentration. You can't drive, you can't eat without concentration. And what we're concentrating on is each person has their own practice, their own anchor. it is, if you're a beginner, then it's more accessible to think of concentrating on one sense. Usually we recommend the body breathing, body being breathed, the kinesthetic sense of motion of the body as it is being breathed, because we don't do the breathing, we are being breathed. It can even be as local as feeling the hands or feeling the sensation of the top of the lip. It's simply, we make it simple. So the simpler it is, the more we can focus in on it. But if you've been practicing for a long time, if you've been practicing for a while, you know that sound is heard with the body. And so we can feel the body breathing and sound simultaneously. They're not two things. So without changing from your number one anchor, you can anchor right now in the way you normally practice meditation, and simultaneously you're hearing the sound of my voice. But that's a more sophisticated practice, the inclusive nature of things, and that it actually can become more and more and more and more inclusive as we continue practicing. But when we're beginning, it's always good to have a specific way of localizing our attention. And the body moving as it breathes, relaxing on the exhalation, is always, always, always an anchor that is worth cultivating. But while you do that, you can hear. Or forget about the body moving as it breathes and just listen. There's always something interesting to hear. Always. And in the middle of the night when everything is totally silent, there's the ringing, humming isness, the quivering, tingling of our own life, which some people call tinnitus or tinnitus. But it's nothing but the life energy quivering. And the life energy, that quivering tinnitus, and the hearing of that tinnitus are the same. Sound and the hearing of the sound are exactly the same. It's cool. And then the sutra continues, and it just says, well, thought's always flowing. Insight's always flowing. We have a great, wonderful, magnificent insight, and it disappears, goes away. We have a horrible dream. We wake up shaking and sweating, and it's gone. We have, every thought that we have is only a flicker. It's ephemeral. It arises from nowhere and remains nowhere. And to actually see the flickering, ephemeral nature of our thoughts is an enormous place of relief, freedom. The Heart Sutra that we chant every morning, the Bodhisattva of compassion, saw that all things were flickering and flowing, and thus was relieved of all suffering. All of those traps of our belief that our minds create based upon our thoughts, based upon our grabbing a hold of flickering thought, are suddenly freed. Everything is flowing. Nothing is solid. We have to confirm that. We have to see that, because our habitual mind, we have been conditioned so that we think, oh, that isn't the way things are. We have been conditioned so that we think that things are solid and are real. But if we look directly at them, I'm always impressed when I think about a glass of warm water in a clear glass. From a distance, with a blurred vision, because we can't see the molecules, from a distance, from a blurred vision, a glass of warm water looks still. But when we get close to it, if our vision were sharper, we would see it's a swirling mass of molecules, swirling currents. It only looks still because we are removed from it. We have separated ourselves. We have not gotten really close to it. If we get close to our breath, we see it never stops. And if we hold it for a moment, it always starts again. It's nothing but a mass of flowing experience. And our thoughts, flowing experience. And when we see things are just flowing experience, the grasping, the attachment, the clutching that happens, we can stop trying to grab a handful of water, trying to clutch at a fistful of fine sand, because they just flow away. And then when we stop doing that, there's great space. The sutra also says that everybody can recognize this. This is just, reality is so ordinary. It can be recognized. When we recognize it directly, we verify it for ourselves. And we can then begin to function from it, or we can watch the fluidity of life functioning through us in an amazing way. And even if we recognize that, the sutra goes on and says, well, okay, that's great, recognize that, see that, find that freedom, but even then, our conditioning, our habits, the social mores we grew up with, they're powerful, they're compelling. And we may see something very clearly and deeply, we may have seen something very clearly and deeply in our life, but unless we are constantly returning and investigating and practicing it with it, then the ordinary life kind of takes over again. It's one of the virtues of living in a place like this, where you're just reminded constantly. Look, recognize. Well, we can have a profound insight, and then we go away, circumstances change, and we get re-involved with all the conditioning, all the shoulds and the oughts, and all the criticism and judgment, and we get inundated with the propaganda of media, and before we know it, our direct insight has become a memory, a faint thing, and instead we get lost. So it is and that's true even in a retreat. We may have an insight in a moment, but unless we keep coming back to anchoring in concentration, in looking and investigation into the nature of things, then our habits of mind will come in and try to grab a hold of it, cover it up, and before we know it, we're battling monsters again. It's said that when our mind is clear, in the seeing there's only the seen, in the hearing there's only the heard, the breathing there's only the breathed. And that means, of course, that we are totally responsive to the world that we find ourselves in. That there is not some state of calm equanimity that is at the center of the world, and we are removed from the world in some way. But when our mind becomes clear, we, as an empty center, as somebody who sees the spacious nature of things, is totally engaged and responsive to our particular world. We all live in different worlds. Totally responsive. The sign of realization is responsiveness. And of course, everybody responds as best they can in the world they live in. And we don't live in the same world. We don't have the same experiences. We don't think the same thoughts. And so the responsiveness that we have to our world is unique. And we have great confidence and no fear, because we are spaciously responding to the exigencies of the world we find ourselves in. So the Heart Sutra, the Platform Sutra talks about this in lots of different ways. One of my favorite stories is the story of a scholar named Hogen. And Hogen had studied Dharma for many years, very bright, very intelligent guy. Apparently it said that if you ask him a question, he can give you 10 different answers that all had some resonance. And he went to his teacher. He met a teacher named Isan. And Isan said, "Great, I'm wonderful to meet you. I'm glad you're so, I've got so much erudition. I'm glad that you've got such a rich background. Please give me one thing that is absolutely fresh. Say one thing that's absolutely fresh." And Hogen started saying things, and he said, no, you read that somewhere. No, you heard that somewhere else. No, you've seen that happen somewhere else. And this went on for years. Hogen would go and do Sanzen. Isan would say, fresh, fresh. And of course, he would try jumping up and down and shouting and saying all kinds of profound and not so profound things. And Isan just kept saying, no. That's an idea. You have this idea, if I just jump up and down, you have this idea. No, I want something fresh. I want something that has no antecedent to it. And it became a real koan. What is it that's fresh? What is it that's alive? That's not conditioned. And at one point, Hogen said, I just don't know. I'm so stuck by this. Now, of course, when you have a koan like that, the person who has to be satisfied is you. It doesn't matter whether somebody says, yes, you got it, no, you don't got it, who cares? But when we have a fundamental life question, when we have something that really is right down to the fundamental dissatisfaction and grading of our life, we have to be satisfied. And so Hogen wasn't satisfied. He kept trying, and he just kept saying, nope, not it. Finally he said, I just can't do this anymore. I'm going to go and I'll take care of a grave, one of the ancestors' graves. And he was sweeping the grave, taking care of it. Those of you who've been in Asia know there are lots of monuments, lots of different places. And one day while he was quietly sweeping, a rock flew from his broom and hit a bamboo with a clunk. And in that moment, Hogen's mind opened. In the same way, our minds have the potential to be opened when they are deeply curious, deeply still, deeply in touch with the foundation of being, which is our root. So please, as we go forward in this retreat, take your primary practice. It's not as though there's some philosophic thing that is separate from that. It's not as though there's some insight that is separate from that. Take your primary practice and be more intimate with it, more curious, be more resonant with your own heart. And then see what is at the core of your very being. What is at the core of our life? And then give life to that life with your life. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Zen Community of Oregon podcast, and thank you for your practice. New episodes air every week. Please consider making a donation at zendust.org. Your support supports us.